All right, so let's call the Police Services Board meeting to order. The time is 9 a.m. We'll now proceed with item 2, approval of the agenda. I have here that Councillor Campbell has requested that the agenda be amended by moving item 11.1, community education, pedestrian crossovers to follow item 6.1, minutes, February 1st, 2023. The recommendation now reads that the agenda for the Police Service Board meeting of Wednesday, May 24, 2023 be accepted as amended. Do I have a mover? Rob, a seconder? Dory? All in favor? Motion carried. Are there any declarations of interest? None. Presentations. Under item 4.1, there is a presentation from Traffic Logics regarding automated speed enforcement and automated warning letters, and they have joined us virtually.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for inviting us. I do have my colleague online as well, Stacey Noto. My name is Mark Coupland. I'm the Vice President of Logics ITS, which is the parent company of Traffic Logics. We're known better as Traffic Logics, but Logics ITS is the umbrella company of several companies within the umbrella. Myself and Stacey head up the vision section of the company, which obviously includes automated speed enforcement and Vision Zero warnings. Cameras don't have to be necessarily about enforcement tickets. Cameras can also be warnings for educational purposes. And we've found this very, very useful in the United States, because out of the 50 states, I think that only 14 have legislation to allow automated speed enforcement with penalties and fines. The remaining 36 are kind of left high and dry, so it gives them a way of a bridge to automated speed enforcement by issuing a warning letter under the Vision Zero initiatives. I did send a PowerPoint presentation into Caitlin. Do you have that, or do I share my screen with the one I've got here? How do I do this remote?
No, we have the
presentation, and if you'd also like to share your screen, that's completely up to you.
Yeah, I think it's probably easy if I can if I can actually share my screen, because I'm going to be PowerPoint. Get this one. Excuse me. Here we go. And let me know if you can see the screen coming in front of you. That fantastic. So a little bit of an overview about this. This was an hour and a half long presentation, so I've trimmed it down to 10 minutes. So I'm going to skirt through it a little bit quicker. But we normally do this presentation over a luncheon or a breakfast meeting where we invite all interested parties to come from far and wide. And I do have my other partners with me when we do this, namely LAS, which is the business arm of A&O. We're working closely with the LAS system, the Ontario Traffic Council, who are responsible for a lot of the training when it comes to provincial offences officers and that kind of thing, and then Conduit Transportation, who are the selected back-end service provider for the LAS programme to administer the tickets. Normally, with me, I do have one of my territory managers, Malvika Gandhi. Malvika lives in Mississauga, so she's a native to Ontario, and I've also got Stacey Noto on the line with me, so if you have questions at the end of it. Our partners, as I said, I'm more than happy to give you the contact details of these people. Obviously, Jeff Barton, who runs the LAS program, is the Energy and Asset Services Manager. Angelo Regan, who works for Conduit, and Dan Shimsky, who's the Senior Consultant as well. So we have a very wide, expansive network of people to assist in this. Quickly brief overview of the company. I said we own several different companies under the Logics ITS banner. And obviously everybody knows us in Canada predominantly as Traffic Logic, because we're based in Montreal, Quebec. We're not just a a North American company. We also have a parking company based out of Montreal, Quebec as well. But we also have a global brand as well with offices in India and Mexico. We make our own software. We have a company called Enforcement Logics, which is specifically on this outside of continental North America. So we've been doing this for many, 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 many years. Not so much in North America, but certainly out of North America, in India and South America. We've been doing automated speed enforcement for many years. Just an overview, you know what we do, from the driver feedback side to the message board, to the speed umps, to the vehicle data recording, to the classification, to the turn counts, and then what we're talking about here, the speed cameras. As I said, we are based in Montreal, Quebec. We have satellite offices on 4 different continents. And the biggest thing we offer, apart from those rubber things in the middle, is a cloud-based single platform for all our equipment with 24/7, 365 access. We refer to the rubber, the modular rubber solutions as our only done product, because everything is connected 24/7, 365. And I think we're up to well over 30,000 connected products talking into our cloud server, and our cloud server talking to it, and that grows daily. I think we're just law enforcement and emergency management, state, federal, and local, and fire and emergency management for the available message systems. And then we've got the local, state, and provincial government, Department of Public Works, military, that kind of stuff. And we do have a very healthy business in the private sector, which does everything off of a public road, i.e. HOAs, business industrial. Some of our larger corporate customers include Amazon, Walmart.com, because speeding basically is a problem everywhere. It's not necessarily on a public road. You wouldn't believe the amount of complaints that people get from a non-public highway or a non-public road. So we do have a very healthy private sector, and we've got a dedicated team that just looks after the private sector customers. The 3 E's, I think most people are aware of this. I like to call it make, advise, penalise. So any part of any automated speed enforcement, the biggest part for me is the first E, which is the public outreach, the warning letters, the driver feedback signage. We're trying to change driver behaviour, not necessarily punish them, straight away. So for me, any part of any ASE program, I kind of term it ASEEE, so automated speed education, engineering, and then enforcement. The engineering obviously comes out with road reconstruction, road marking, speed umps, speed tables, speed cushions, that kind of thing. And then if all else fails, then we go down the enforcement route, and you kind of enforce compliance by taking money out of people's back pockets, and that's the ultimate step. But before you get there, you should always consider the 3 E's. Somebody once said to me many, many years ago, the beauty of the enforcement side of it and the education side of it, you're only targeting the people who need to be targeted. With speed umps and speed tables and speed cushions, you're inconveniencing everybody, even those people that are actually complying with what you want them to do. And I never kind of thought of it like that, but it's actually true. So I can't stress enough the 3 E's. And for me, the biggest one, and where you start with, is the education side of it. So we do have 2 camera definitions, which are available in Ontario for public usage. We have our Guardian Enforcer, and this is basic only for warnings and Vision Zero initiatives, where there'll be no monetary fine. A warning notice can be issued, and with the advice to actually slow down. And a lot of drivers will take heed of this, and there's some which won't, and then you have to go to the enforcement side of it. We do have case studies live in certain states in the United States where they'll be doing this. You go over a certain speed, a warning letter is printed out the back of the system, sent to the registered owner. And if it's really bad, it's printed out, and you get a knock on the door from a police officer, and it's presented to the owner of the vehicle. And it's had terrific reviews. And I'm happy to share the case studies. And CBS News actually went down and did an article on it. Both cameras use LiDAR technology, which is it's It's LiDAR on the infrared waveband. It's multi-lane, so it's not radar. It's not detectable by a radar detector, obviously, because it's LED beams of light. It has IR illumination, so at night time it reverts to infrared. So even if you got somewhere pitch black, pitch dark, you will see birds in plate. And we have standard resolution image transfer and data storage, which we can go into as a questions. If you do want to do automated speed enforcement, then this is Guardian Enforcer Plus, and you'll see there's a lot more goes on to this. It's the same technology, but there's a lot more enhanced resolution, storage, transfer times, etc., etc., etc. And this is the camera Enforcer Plus, which if you went with the LAS system would be provided to you. What we do differently to the current cameras in place in Toronto, ours are pole mounted, ours are solar, so there's no change in the batteries every 2 days. Ours, there's a SIM card and a GPS modem inside of the camera, so within about 15 to 25 seconds of a violation being captured, it's sent back to the cloud server. The Toronto system, somebody has to go around every 2 days and download a thumb drive and then drive it to Toronto in a sealed evidence bag and blah, blah, blah. It can take a week before it's even looked at. You can look at this within 15 to 25 seconds. So we do offer an AC hardwired version, fixed on a pole. We do offer a solar version, which is permanent, semi-permanent. We can offer a version on a trailer and a trailer with a DFS, which is a driver feedback center. I will go into this and I'll show you pictures at the end. Everything we do is all inclusive. There's nothing to do. There's no added features on it. We'll even include our guy coming in, commission it, and do the on-site calibration. We do get tech support for life with all our equipment, and we never, ever, ever charge for tech support. And as long as I'm sitting in this seat, I don't see anybody ever being charged for tech support. So once you're our customer, you're our customer for life. And you see in the photograph there, there's a driver feedback sign. This also plays into the education side of it, where not mandatory, not required, not even a must, but it's a very good educational tool, especially if you're going to be enforcing fines. You're telling the driver in advance to get to the camera he's doing a certain speed. He's got a post speed limit sign. He's got the camera warning sign in front of him. Now he's got something telling him his speed, and if he still doesn't slow down, the camera can takes away all of the arguments for why I was given this ticket. Again, it's a fantastic public relations tool, and it goes into the education part of the 3Ds, as I said. I will show you photographs of systems shortly. And come to it. So there's your solar camera, and you've all seen the Toronto ones, which are the big mailbox things stuck at the sides of the road. No, these mount to any pole or post or anything of street furniture that are in place within the municipality. On the right-hand side is the same camera, but an AC version. You can see it's so much smaller, lighter, self-compact, and you can get it 3-4 meters in the air, so you're not going to get people pushing them over and spray painting them. I will say the only vulnerable part of the system with the solar panel is the solar panel. People throw bricks at it. It's a big target to throw bricks at the solar panel. I can't control accidental damage and vandalism, but that to me is the biggest one. It's a bigger target to aim at anyway. And you don't have to be the star pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays to hit that solar panel. Same camera, but it's on a trailer. You see with the solar panel, and then the trailer with a driver feedback sign. They're our 4 most popular models in the way of actually doing this. So let's go into the legal requirements for Ontario. It has to be a rear plate capture. We only capture from the rear, obviously, because there's the right to privacy and identifying drivers. Even if we did capture from the front, it's designed specifically not to intrude into the vehicle occupancy space, so you wouldn't be able to see who it is. It's not artificial intelligence at that rate. You may be able to see if we captured from the front it was a person with blonde hair or dark hair and maybe wearing glasses, maybe a beard. That's it. But I say we don't capture from the front, we would capture from the rear. It's got to be a readable province and license plate number, which we do with our optical character recognition. We have to define the lane that the vehicle's travelling in. Lane 1 being the nearest to the footway, lane 2 being, and then working the way across. You have to have by law a 90-day warning period and a post of signage to say that automated speed enforcement is coming, and you can't issue a ticket for the first 90 days. Day 91, you're in play, and there's a statutory warning sign with height, sizes, weights. We can also supply that if you want us to provide the signage. And then the big one, these are only active in community safety zones, and they have to be designated by the local council. And typically the school zones, elderly care facilities, that kind of thing. So once you've designated your community safety zone, then you put your 90-day warning period in there, and then off you go. And the big one, it cannot be on a road with a posted speed limit above 80 kilometres an hour. So it stops you putting them on the faster highways. If you've got a 79-kilometre posted speed limit, you're good. If you're 80, you cannot do it regardless of your 90-day warning period or your community safety zone designation. So that's a big one for some of these more rural towns and cities where they do have one designated community safety zone, but the speed limit's above 80. You can't do it. The law won't allow you to do it. Nothing stopping you writing a division with 0 warning tickets, but you cannot do the automated speed enforcement. I can't stress that enough. Image and storage. It's secure encryption. As I said, there's no USBs, there's no drivers traveling to the camera every 2 days and putting the sealed evidence bag and driving it somewhere. Very important. The next one, data storage, is on AWS servers, and they are located in Canada. No information ever leaves the country of Canada. Obviously the camera has to be calibrated according to provincial and local guidelines. We will do the initial install calibration, and then it would be incumbent upon the owner to calibrate as per your local agreements. And typically the police, I personally would calibrate it at the same frequency as what the police calibrate their handheld stuff and their stuff in the car. The law says it has to be calibrated at least once every 12 months. But you may have some local regulations which call for every 6 months, but the actual law says actually they're within the last 12-month period. Well, let's get into this. What do you start with planning? The left-hand side is a list of questions. They are not exhaustive. There could be another 15, 20 questions. These are the ones we most get. And the biggest one is, well, have I got a problem down here? I don't really know. Just because the public perceives there's a problem doesn't actually mean there's a problem. I'm an ex-policeman. I spent half my time dealing with residents' complaints that vehicles speed up and down the road. And when you actually did the traffic study, the speeds were nowhere near what the resident was claiming to be. So ascertain your locations, ascertain your sites. Is there a real need? Are there high accident zones? All these things actually come into it. And the biggest one, is there a history of fatal accidents or a lot of crashes? That's obviously a big one. And again, so it's data when it comes to this, and we can help you with the pre-deployment data collection as well with some of our other products, as already mentioned. And then, do I want to do the ASE or warnings? That's a decision that the council will make. If I do ASE, do I want to use the provincial courts or use the administrative penalties? The administrative penalties seems to be the flavour where most people are going to, because it's easier to administer. You keep it within the municipality. It's administrative penalty treated like a parking ticket, but then you have to employ your own provincial offences officers. And everything's dealt with at a local level. Nothing touches the courts, and the courts love this because we're not blocking the court system up by doing administrative penalties. Virtually every customer in the past 12 months that we've spoken to, they have not even mentioned going down the provincial fines route. It's all going to be through administrative penalties. But that does create a problem for you guys, because you're going to have to employ people to administer this in the municipality. And then you need to establish an appropriate back-end system of staffing. Whether you're going to do it yourself or whether you're going to contract with LAS. As I said, you need to gather data and then assess and analyze the data before you actually created an implementation plan. As I said, you've got to designate the community safety zone. You have to give them 90 days advance notice, and then you have to deploy the legal signage. That, in a nutshell, is basically what you've got to do before you can actually deploy anything. So what are my procurement options? You can buy these cameras direct from ourselves using our Canoe contract, which is listed there. And with that, you would have to utilise your own in-house ticketing solution, i.e., administer penalties or through the courts, and you do it locally, and you'll employ local people to do this. But you'd have to train provincial offences officers and administration officers for the hearings and adjudication officer. Nothing that's majorly complicated, but it takes some further steps from organisation. And that's where OTC come in, because they are doing the training for provincial offences officers to actually do this. If you had several municipalities interested, these officers can be shared between the municipality, especially the smaller ones. We've got people looking at 5 or 6 of the smaller towns and cities. They're actually doing it together and sharing resources. There's nothing stopping you doing it. Then the other option is to purchase from us, and then you contract with somebody like Conduit to do your back-end processing. But then again, it still works for you. Or if you totally want a turnkey service, that's the LAS service, and they do everything. They will lease the cameras, they'll do the back-end processing, they'll send your tickets out, they'll do your adjudications, they'll do absolutely everything for you. If you want turnkey and do nothing, then LAS is the way to go. The fourth option is try and enroll in the JPC program in Toronto. Best of luck with that. It was a huge waiting list, and you've already got to see a camera for like 2 to 3 years. But it is an option. And then your fifth option is do absolutely nothing, and you just carry on doing what you're doing. So that's, as I see it, as your 4 options. If you go with this, you get full servicing, complete back-end ticketing solutions. We've got multiple power solutions, education, legal signage, and you do have flexible payment, lease options and terms if you go through the LAS. So there's a lot to take in with this. I get it, and I've condensed this down to like 10, 15 minutes. We normally talk about this for an hour, hour and a half. So I always finish off with this photograph, or this series of photographs. People say that the speed cameras are ugly at the side of the road, and they're a carbuncles at the side of the road, and they're not needed and required. I would offer an argument and debate with anybody that 4 of them images are a lot more ugly at the side of the road than the other 2. I just Googled roadside memorials, and you wouldn't believe the billions and billions and billions of images of roadside memorials. And if the camera placement just says one of these roadside memorials going up, then in my opinion, it's all worth it. And as an ex-crash investigator and senior accident investigator, I've seen the carnage firsthand that it causes. And for the speed of a camera, I'm just slowing down a little bit. If it just saves one, it just makes everything worth it. So I've whistled through that. I normally talk about this for an hour, hour and a half, so I'm trying to condense it down to 10, 15 minutes for you. I hope I gave you a brief overview of what's available. We're more than happy to do an in-depth discussion with anybody who wants to do a one-on-one session. Myself and Stacey are always in Ontario once every 4 to 6 weeks anyway. We can do this on site or via Teams or Zoom or whatever you want to do. More than happy to do with it. My colleagues from Conduit are always in Ontario. The people from LAS are available. They're based out of Toronto. So there's people to talk to. And this is just a leader intro flavour. This is what you can have, and we're more than happy now with it now. Apart from that, I'm more than happy to take any questions, and I know Stacey's as well, what I've just spoke about for the past 15 minutes. And in advance, I'll thank you all for your time and allowing us to talk to you this morning.
Any questions? Rory?
Thank you, Mark, for your presentation. Quick question. The 90 days, does it have to be up and running for 90 days, or can we just put the signage for 90 days? And if we switch locations, do we have to do another 90 days?
Yes, every location. And when, so first part of the question, it doesn't have to be up and running. You can put the sign up for 90 days, and then on day 91, put the camera up. The camera doesn't have to be there for the 90-day period. It's kind of useful to put the camera up in the 90 days because you're getting some warnings and getting some flavour of what's going to happen and regular offenders. And the police because it records every license plate as a threshold, if you've got the same guy coming through between 8 and 8:15 and he's doing 100 kilometres an hour, I know what I'm doing as a cop, sitting at 5 minutes to 8, waiting around the corner. I know what I'm going to do. So it becomes a force multiplier for the police. So in answer, it's ideal to have the camera there for the 90-day with the period, but it's not mandatory. So you can have the warning sign, then put the camera up on day 91 and off you go. If you move it, then yes, you have to do a 90 days to the other location and start the whole process again. And when you remove the camera from position 1, you have to take the signage down, I was led to believe, and then you have to do it. But when you bring it back, you start another 90 days. It's a peculiarity of Ontario law, apparently, which don't really understand that. If it's a community safety zone, it's a community safety zone. I personally don't understand it, but I'm not a lawmaker. But that's as the law's written right now in Ontario, and that's obviously subject to change because they make amendments all the time to the law. And as this expands, I've no doubt there'll be lots of amendments and change orders passed to it because it's the speed program has been predominantly based around Toronto and the GTA plus Ottawa. Now it's being expanded to the smaller towns and municipalities. And they will have their own different set of problems to what Toronto's got, Richmond Hill, Markham, Vaughan, Hamilton, all them kind of people. You will have totally different issues to what they've got. So I personally believe, I think there'll be some flexibility down the line and some amendments to it. But that's as it stands now.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? I think that concludes it. We thank you very much for your presentation. And I don't think we have any more questions.
If you want myself or Stacey to follow back with you or any of our partners, Jeff from LAS or the OTC or Angela O'Regan from Conduent, more than happy to do a one-on-one more in depth because I literally just scooted through that. It's normally 90 minutes plus for that conversation. So I know I've missed something, but I've tried to just pull out the pertinent points for you. There's a lot more to this, but I've just kind of gave you the 300,000 foot view of it.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time.
Have a good day and be well. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Looks like there are no delegations. Moving on. Item 6.1 are the minutes of the previous meeting held on February 1st, 2023. The recommendation reads that the Police Service Board minutes from February 1st, 2023 be accepted as presented. Do I have a mover? Mary? Seconder? Rob? All in favor? Motion is carried. Next on the agenda is new business, which has been moved up as requested. We have an item under 11.1, community education regarding pedestrian crossovers. Matthew Armstrong will speak on this item.
So this was brought forward by Campbell at the most recent meeting, and I'll kind of hand it over to you to kind of explain what the issue is, and then we'll talk a little bit about possible solutions.
Okay, I've just been noticing in town, we've got these fabulous new crossings, flashing lights. People are feeling quite safe in pushing the button, but no one's stopping. So, well, not no one, some people don't stop. So I had my heart in my throat last Saturday because 2 kids pushed the button, skipped out into the street, and were narrowly missed by getting hit by not one, but 2 cars. I myself crossed the road, and OPP officer stopped on the one side, but another car just ran through going the other way. So my thought is to somehow do a community education plan or program. We were talking at our last meeting that we used to have Elmer the safety elephant. I don't know if it's part of your generation, but we had schools, this elephant would go into schools, talk about safety and kind of thing. So I'm just trying to throw out any kind of ideas how we can get Prescott to be more cognizant of pedestrian safety. And I don't want to do fines and all this stuff, but it's just, I don't know, you go to Halifax and people will stop if you're in a crosswalk. So I think we can actually turn the town around and get more safe crossings. I also have questions of the OPP about, are there certain crosswalks that are designated differently than others? I've heard mention of courtesy crosswalks versus mandatory crosswalks, whether the paint on the road is different, anything we can do to get these cars to realize that they need to stop. So that's.
So when we originally rolled the new crosswalks out, we did issue a social media campaign, and it shows a nice video as to how you're to proceed. And so one of the things, it's also incumbent upon the pedestrian to make eye contact with the driver, and the driver to acknowledge that a pedestrian is there. So we're going to roll that out once again. Our suggestion was also to go into the schools as well as Walker House and any community organization that has a large number of members to really talk about crosswalks and how the appropriate use of them is. Many municipalities that have implemented the exact same ones have done kind of that video to show people exactly how to walk through, and we'll continue sharing those multiple times a month. Our other option was talking to the OPP and perhaps just having some enforcement at those crosswalks, kind of viewing what's going on at them, and warning drivers or finding them if they're failing to stop. I have a hard time understanding how, when somebody sees those rapid flashing lights, that in your mind it's something that maybe you should slow down, stop, there's something going on here. Because just if I think back to a long time ago when I took my driver's exam and whatnot, yellow meant caution. So it's disappointing that people just don't seem to either pay attention or understand what that means. But certainly those were some of the ideas that we came up with.
Yeah, like I gotta say the crosswalks are fantastic on King Street. They're amazing. I see people stop, but the law is the person needs to be fully across the roadway prior to either directional traffic going. So just because, say you cross one lane and now it's free for the driver, they feel that they can proceed safely even if they have stopped. If the pedestrian isn't all the way across the roadway, that driver can still be charged. So if you want us to move to an enforcement capacity, we can do that, no problem. The fines are probably $110 or something like that for drivers violating that, as long as the crosswalk is actually activated, right? So just because there's a designated crosswalk, if it's not an activated crosswalk, like no different than if it was a controlled intersection with a set of lights. If someone decides to cross there because they feel it's safe, but it's not it's the hand, not the walking individual, then those laws are a little bit different. So we'd have to just make sure that, it's an activated crosswalk, someone's pushed the button, it's lights. The pedestrian is still responsible for their safety. However, if a driver did strike them, the driver would be at fault. But we don't want people just to assume that the crosswalk's activated and I'm safe to go, because, we're transferring the liability to someone else, because that can lead to personal injury and those kinds of things, which we don't want to see, right? So definitely, as you mentioned, Matt, if the pedestrian is going to be making eye contact and putting out that social media messaging just to educate people on how to protect themselves at these intersections is going to be important. At the end of the day, the driver is liable for driving their vehicle, and we can hold them accountable through enforcement action. So.
There was a question at council, if someone has safely crossed and the light is still flashing, can a driver proceed through that flashing light?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. If there's no pedestrian within the controlled intersection, it's not like a green or red light, that's a little different, but the pedestrian crosswalks, if there's no pedestrian within that crosswalk and they've safely traveled from one side to the other, the drivers can proceed with caution.
So you're saying there is a difference between a crosswalk with a flashing light and one that just has painted lines, whether people have to stop or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, like what used to be on King Street, where it was just the painted lines that went across. That is there's no indicator for the driver to stop other than the pedestrian being on the side of the road, and it's a courtesy thing. But the driver has the right of way at that point. Whereas if the driver's been forced to stop through red light, crosswalk signals, or those kinds of things, then the default becomes the pedestrian right of way, so.
I would hope to start with an education program. And is it in your capacity to help with that?
We can have our community services officers share the messaging that the town prepares, just to put it on our social media platforms and those kinds of things. So we can assist with the social media messaging and the public education. And then, we can assess how the feedback is to the counselors at the next meeting and decide if we want to move to an enforcement capacity. The officers always have the option to do enforcement, regardless of what the education capacity is. And in that enforcement, we can do warnings and or charges. So depending on if we get a complaint, like if a member of the public calls us to complain directly and says, license plate ABC 123 just about hit me in a crosswalk, we can always engage in some kind of either enforcement or education with that individual driver at that point as well, so.
Okay.
It also helps, just a time with the inspector, is to have your crosswalks painted properly with the white paint so that, to ensure that both they're visible along with the lights. So that is always very important on the safety aspect, so drivers can see both and they're clearly aware.
And do you still go into schools in any kind of education capacity?
If the school requests us,
Okay.
yeah, if the school requests us, we go in. I mean, we do walkthroughs of schools and we are engaged with the schools, but it all depends on what they're asking us for, so. Because education is a responsibility of the school. So if they're asking us for something particular, like a topic, then we'll go in and present on that. So.
Okay. Because the example of those two children, obviously they would have been at fault. They thought we pushed the button, we can run across, but they had no eye contact with.
Yeah, no, if the light was activated, the driver would be at fault. However, that doesn't mitigate the risk that those children would put in.
Yeah.
Right? So like that's what I was saying. Just because the light's activated doesn't mean, it's no different than if you have a green light, you should still check your intersection prior to entering, right? For your own, yes, you have the right of way.
Yeah.
But if you want to ensure your own personal safety, then you need to make sure you understand your surroundings at all times.
This is a note too, I'm more in the north end, but I find the one near the Burger King
Yeah, that's the most.
are the worst, by far the worst, because two-way traffic, two lanes.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of times a big truck will stop and the kids are here and the other drivers don't see him in the other lane.
Yeah.
So I can confirm that those will be changed over to match what's on King Street. We feel that that will be a lot more effective and also a lot more visible. So
Good.
It's a complex intersection where that crossover is, just because you've got the T intersection there, and then the stop lines don't match what the intersection dimensions are. So it's a unique challenge, that location for sure. So
That might probably help a lot. Yeah, any more questions?
Quick question, Josh, do you guys get a lot of complaints about this?
crosswalks, no. But a lot of people feel they shouldn't bother the police, which sounds bad, but it's not a bother to call us or to report it on our online reporting. We don't get a lot of complaints about crosswalks. Counselors and the municipality will probably get more, because it's often created through, like, the PXOs is regulated through the municipality on where you're going to put those locations. But yeah, we don't get a lot of complaints. Speeding complaints, yes, but crosswalk issues, no.
Okay, thank you.
I think we're done the new business. No discussion on that. Moving to action items. Under item 7.1, there's an action items. We have several items. Item A is a report for the 2024 municipal policing statement property count. Is there any discussion on this item? Item B is a verbal update from staff regarding the South Grenville District High School Commencement Awards. Lindsay Velkamp can speak to this item.
you, Chair. Annually, South Granville District High School does hold commencement awards for the previous year of students. And in the past, the PSB board has awarded 2 students going into role in schooling, have donated 2 bursary amounts of $250. So South Granville has reached out to see if the board would like to proceed with that amount to offer the bursaries again. I'm putting that information to the board. The commencement is held Tuesday, June 27th at 5 p.m. And typically, if the board does wish to provide that bursary amount, we do send a board representative to do the presentation as well.
Any discussion? Corey?
There's 2 awards of 250,
Yes.
and that's, the town pays for that?
Yes, it comes out of the PSB budget, but ultimately the town pays for it, yes.
I'm gonna be there, so if you want, I can.
Yeah, I did it last year. I'm out.
I'm sure they'll want me to do a few, but that's fine.
Did the clerk need a motion?
Yes, so again, through you, Chair, I do have a recommendation here that reads that the Prescott Police Services Board proceed with 2 South Granville District High School commencement awards for the 2023 year in the amount of $250 each.
Do we have a mover? Corey? Seconder? Rob? Okay, item C, well, sorry.
I just have to ask if it's carried.
Oh, sorry, forgot that part. All in favor? COPP policing reference guide, is there any discussions on this item? We have a recommendation that reads the information items be received, noted, and filed. Do I have a mover? Mary, and a seconder. Gory, all in favor? Motion is carried. The report under 8.1 is the police services report for the months of January to March 2023, provided by Detachment Commander Joshua Kingsley.
So I have the April report. It was just the April report that was supposed to be presented, was it not?
January.
Okay. I will give the April report and then we'll summarize. It does have year-to-date numbers in here, so my apologies. I thought we had presented the past report at the last time, so that's on me, but I will present it to the board afterwards. Just before we get started, I just want to thank the community of Prescott for coming together and supporting the police. Obviously, Sergeant Eric Mueller was killed on duty on May 11th, and he did work in Prescott for numerous years. As you may have heard, in 2008, he was injured here at the 730 truck stop and then returned to work. So he was a big part of Grenville County and Prescott. And then the other 2 officers are recovering. But the town really came together. Like, we had a lot of people just show up at the office, expressing their condolences, bringing, messages of condolence and all that kind of stuff. So I just want to acknowledge that for those that may be watching and also for the board here. So thank you very much for that. It was a difficult time over the last week. So getting into the April, what I'll do is I'll cover the April month and then I'll go to the year-to-date numbers just to summarize for the board. So when we look at our violent crimes, we had 3 sexual assaults within the month of April, which was down slightly. When we look at our year-to-date, which I didn't dive into the data too much because it was just a small increase, we are at 10 sexual assaults year-to-date, which is a slight increase of 3. When I look at our assaults, you'll see that there was none in the month of April, but overall year-to-date, we're up 11, which is a 260%, just over 260% increase. So that struck out to me. So I looked into that slightly. A few of those were domestic related, where there was domestic assaults, so intimate partner violence. There was a couple where there was friends that were fighting with each other. So not necessarily students, but just adult friends that were fighting after consuming alcoholic beverages. And then there were a few, trying to read my writing here. An assault. Oh, sorry, parental assaults. So we were getting more referrals from Child and Family Services regarding children alleging that their parents were assaulting them. So we did have quite a few of those come in during the first 3 months of this year. So we do have a great working relationship with Child and Family Services. And anytime there's an allegation of assault from a parent, we do investigate that jointly with Children's Aid. So those don't always result in charges because a lot of times there is disciplinary measures that parents can take, which it may be interpreted as assault but the code does justify some parental force being applied. However, we do weigh those and we have our detectives look at those individually. Other crimes against persons, which are utter threats types offenses. We had 2 of those during the month of April and it was up slightly. So overall, the biggest increase being the assaults brought our number from 17 to 30 for violent crimes. When we look at our property crimes, we had 1 break and enter during the month of April, which was down slightly. Our year to date, we've had 2, which was similar to 2022. Our thefts, we had 6, which was up significantly. And when we look at our year to date, we were up to 21 from 9. So I did look into that. 3 of those were pharmacy thefts, which is something that I'm working with Matt regarding the grant he'll be presenting to you shortly. Another one was from a shoplifting from the LCBO. And then we had 2 investigations involving the food bank. So one's currently active and the other one was an employee had one of their phones stolen. So we ended up resolving that. Frauds, we're up to 4 in the month of April, up slightly from 2022. And we are seeing an increase, which I know I report on every single PSB meeting. We're up 14 from 9, so we're up 55%. We are running in Grenville County, we are running a pilot where I've got 2 officers dedicated from Grenville County and I've brought in regional members from outside of Grenville County to work as a fraud team. So currently those officers are basically, this is their 2nd quarter that they're investigating. They've got 115 active investigations. Many of these investigations are international. Oh yeah, they've got quite a few. A lot of them start in Grenville County. But as you can imagine, fraudsters and criminals have no jurisdictional boundaries. So when we start an investigation in Grenville County, oftentimes we're able to link other areas within the OPP and municipal partners. So a month ago, they executed a search warrant in the province of Quebec for one of the fraudsters that was committing a building scam. So, offering to build garages and defrauding people, not providing the service that they were offering. So we're looking to potentially clear that. We're upwards of $800,000 of victimization within just East Region detachments. We're also working and developing international partners in the US and abroad, because a lot of the cyber crimes, what is happening, and you may or may not have seen this in media news, but there's a lot of human trafficking, slavery international, where these international agencies are recruiting people for what they believe to be legitimate jobs, and then they're forcing them into fraud, trafficking, or cyber-enabled crime. So I think it was just in the Philippines, just ended up rescuing upwards of 1,000 different people who were human trafficked. So these people are forced into slave labor to become call center workers to defraud people in North American countries and abroad. So we are working with those international partners through that fraud pilot to try to devalue the need for the human element in this. So it's a work in progress. We're looking at it as a global lens, even though we're focusing on the pilot here. We're hoping that that's going to have some long-term impacts coming. They're also doing a lot of education seminars to try to reduce the victimization, because we're still getting a lot of grandparent scams and a lot of those traditional scams locally. So we're trying to raise awareness And from a regional lens, I have our community services coordinator trying to work with large corporations. So when their staff see potential people coming in for buying gift cards and those kinds of things, it can maybe flag that to the police. So we can get those, we can intercept that and try to reduce the loss that these people are experiencing. We've also developed partnerships with FinTrack to get, FinTrack is a organization that banking institutes have to report to for suspicious transactions or large transactions. So we're getting proactive disclosures from FinTrack on some of these cash transfers that are happening with these victims to try to again stop that. Because we're seeing a lot of large fraud transfers with romance scams. So, you know, the false bravado of love abroad and those kinds of things, which people fall victim to, especially in this day of lack of, you know, social engagements. So, you know, online love, it ends up being large losses for these victims. So we're working proactively to get those disclosures from FinTrack in order to prevent further victimization. So it's a work in progress, but we are taking very proactive steps to address the frauds because we know it's a multi-billion-dollar industry for these criminals. So we're having some very good successes. In terms of our mischiefs, we did not have any in the month of April, which is great. We're up slightly in the month or year to date from 4 to 5. Drug crime, nothing in the month of April. And so far, year to date, we've only had 1 possession charge laid. When we go to the next page, which is our clearance rates, the month of April, we're up to 80% clearance on our violent crimes, which is up 30%. When we look at our year to date, we're up slightly from 64.7 to 66.7, so we're up 2%. Our property crimes for the month of April for their clearance rates is up 14%. So we're sitting at around just over 27%. And even our year to date, that's up slightly to 24%. Drug crime, because we hadn't done in April, there's no reporting status there. So year to date, though, we are up 50%. So we've got a 100% clearance rate, but there was only 1 drug possession charge. So that makes sense. In terms of these clearance rates, as I mentioned at every meeting, they're going to fluctuate day to day. So as we don't close calls unsolved, they stay open until we solve them or we get new evidence. So as officers continue to investigate those crimes, you'll see those numbers will fluctuate up and down depending on the call volume as well as the closure rates that we get. So when I look at the detailed billing summary, there are some things that flag out. So when I look at the violent crimes, you can see that we are up. The previous year, you were at 363 for this reporting period, for this year-to-date reporting period, where you're up to 521 now. That has to do with the increase in assaults as well as sexual assaults. So you'll see that, you know, sexual assaults have gone up from 79 hours to 158. And then your assaults, pardon me, are, yeah, they're overall, because the assaults are kind of categorized into different groups. You've got your assault CBH, which is 63.2 hours, which is your level 2 assault. So either the use of a weapon or someone sustained bodily harm, where you did not have any during this reporting period last year. So that brought that up another 63 hours. On the next page, when we look at our other criminal code violations, including traffic, the one I'm going to bring to your attention is bail violations. As you know, our commissioner has been very vocal regarding bail reform in the province. And as you can see, when we're looking at our breach of probations and our bail violation offenses, the more offenders that we have out on bail for violent offenders, the more potential charges we're going to see in bail violations. So we went from 30 hours last year to 60 hours in bail violations. So overall, we've gone from 60 hours to 165 hours. And a lot of that has to do with offenders released in the community that are violating the terms of their release, either probation and or bail. So that has an impact on the overall billing hours. Overall, the change isn't that significant. When we look at the overall hours in 2022 for this time period, you were at 1,886. you're currently sitting at 1,920. So a slight increase. So although we've seen a significant increase in violent crimes and some of those bail violation hours, we've seen reductions in some of the other hours for property crimes and those kinds of things, and the drug crimes. And when we go to the last page here, in terms of public complaints, we did initiate a service complaint internally, so that is ongoing. So our professional standards unit is reviewing the matters there, and it has not been substantiated or unsubstantiated at that point, but we did launch an internal complaint, so we have that ongoing. We did have 4 offenders in the crime abatement strategy, but unfortunately we did not do any compliance checks during this month. So we are reviewing that program provincially, and it's going to be reinvigorated. So we're going from intelligence-led policing crime abatement strategy to the offender management and apprehension program. And that is going to be, the reason we're doing that is because we want to be inclusive of all offenders who are on judicial interim releases. Whereas this program was designed for people released on bail violations or on bail conditions. So we're looking to expand the number of offenders that the program is going to capture, so we can make sure that any offender released into our community from the OPP or any other jurisdiction is going to be captured in this program. So that way there we can better manage the offenders that are released. In terms of our cruiser patrol hours, so we had 136 and a half proactive hours conducted in cruisers. So that's not officers in the community, that's just officers driving around, not engaged in traffic enforcement, not engaged in anything else, just visibility patrol. And then we had, just under 19 hours of foot patrol. In terms of media releases during the month of April, we had the vehicle that was hanging over the boardwalk at the Prescott Marina. That was an impaired driving charge. So that person was charged accordingly. They were issued a 90-day suspension. And then we had foot patrols of our officers in the various parks. One which was very popular was with the officer sliding down the slide with the child there in the park in Prescott. So that generated a lot of positive interaction. In terms of crime and traffic campaigns, we did participate in the Easter long weekend traffic blitz, where we laid 203 various Highway Traffic Act offenses, 53 warnings, and 1 suspension. I'm proud to say that Grenville County outperformed all other regions in the East region, and we had no serious personal injury or fatal motor vehicle collisions. In terms of public education campaigns, our mobile crisis response team did do a presentation in conjunction with MAD Canada at South Grenville High School. And they also talked about what consent means. So we talked about consent as well as, getting ready for the safe prom season. One other thing we have, Safeguard Ontario, we've restarted. We've got 3 qualified safeguard inspectors now. So those are going to be deployed to property crimes and break and enters to try to target harden those residences. We are also working with the Alzheimer's Society to initiate Project Lifesaver, which is I don't want to call it a tracking mechanism, but it's a tracking mechanism essentially. So for anybody within our vulnerable population can sign up for Project Lifesaver. So in case we have a wandering person that goes missing, it allows us through, I think it's RFD, basically we get an antenna through the Alzheimer's Society and we can track them down. And the program has extreme success. We're going to be sending several officers at the end of June to do training. One of our officers is an instructor on Project Lifesaver. So the Alzheimer's Society is purchasing the equipment for us. We're going to maintain and manage it. And then we'll be registering people that are vulnerable or wandering to try to ensure that if someone goes missing, we have the fastest and most success to locate them in the best condition possible. Subject to any questions, that's the April report with a bit of year-to-date information.
Questions or discussion? I have a recommendation then. Oops, sorry.
I just wanted to confirm, do we want that included April?
That was April, and then I did cover some year-to-date data.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wasn't quite sure, Chair, if we wanted to change the March to April.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have a recommendation, the police services report for January to April 2023 be accepted as presented. Do I have a mover? Dory, a seconder? Rob, all in favor? Motion carried. The report under 8.2 is the closed circuit television CCT program, grant program. Matthew Armstrong will speak to the report.
Thank you very much. So Inspector Kinsley noted or identified this as a possible solution and opportunity for the town of Prescott. And so what we did is we went through it, took a look at how it could possibly serve the community. Since the report that went to council was presented, Inspector Kinsley was able to provide some additional data. Over the last 3 years, from January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2021, there were 551 violent crimes in the town of Prescott. That's on average 184 per year, or one every second day. This includes assault, harassment, robbery, and sexual assault. 13% of these incidents involved a weapon, 45% included physical force, and 15% included or involved threats. The other item that Inspector Kinsley mentioned a little bit earlier is the thefts from pharmacy has been increasing. Last year there were 6, and I think you mentioned that was it just in April?
Just in April.
There were 3. So this seems to be a more prevalent type of issue, and I'll let Inspector Kinsley talk a little bit about some of the thoughts behind what's happening there.
Yeah, so in terms of what we're seeing trends provincially is high-end shoplifting occurrences. So people are targeting these locations, going in from out of jurisdiction. So we arrested some individuals last March who are part of a traveling crime group. And what they're doing is they basically they're hitting location to location along a 401 corridor. And 416 corridor. So they're hitting municipal jurisdictions, OPP jurisdictions, and into the province of Quebec. They're conducting high-end shoplifting. So they'll steal $4,000 or $5,000 worth of product, and then they'll return, and then they end up drop shipping that out to, various drop shipping agencies. So the thieves do not hold on to the product for a long time. Whereas in the old days, they would go to flea markets and those kinds of things. Now with the ability to drop ship these, goods, the thieves basically steal it, box it up, send it to a drop shipper, and then they're no longer captured. So we're seeing shoppers as being targeted provincially, as are other like Rexall and other pharmacies. And we believe these to be crime groups that are recruiting individuals in order to fund their criminal organizations. So without getting into too much of the investigation, because I don't want to, compromise any ongoing investigations, we do believe that they are similar groups, even though the individuals are different. It's all being funded back to a crime group. So I'm hoping that answers without really giving too much.
So they're not stealing drugs from you?
No, they're not stealing drugs. They tend to be stealing high value goods. So perfume, electric toothbrushes, some electronics. But yeah, they're not stealing from the actual pharmacy. Like they're not stealing opioids or any drugs.
I think that's the misconception when you say stealing from pharmacy.
Yeah, they're using them as because pharmacies are so wide open, like their drugs are very well controlled, whereas the rest of the stuff, they're at risk. Like even, although it wasn't in Prescott, in Kemptville, they were so brazen to the point where they would smash the windows, like the glass windows, and then they would steal all the high-end perfume. So it's resulted in a lot of these pharmacies adapting and putting break-proof glass or moving all their stock off their shelves. But yeah, like as you can imagine, those costs get passed on to the consumer at the end of the day, right? So losses are not going to be, the big businesses are not going to. They'll take some of the loss, but at the end of the day, that gets moved on to the consumer. So, and because we believe them to be involved in a larger crime group, having this CCTV footage capture, because a lot of the pharmacies are on King Street. it would provide value to deterring those crime elements as well as all the other offenses that could be captured, so.
So, and I think if we identify kind of where our hotspots are, I think King Street is where we see the majority of these incidents occurring. So I think that's where we're looking at. Obviously, we'll submit an application. We won't proceed unless we are successful in the application itself. But certainly, we'll work with police services as well as the OPP in determining exactly what type of system, how it will be utilized, those types of things. But I did want to make a point, though, that unless an incident occurs, it's not monitored. So I think that's the key. Is it's not that somebody's sitting there watching what's going on, that sort of thing. It's referred to when an incident occurs and then being able to undertake that investigative process.
Can I ask a question directly to Josh there? Cameras, if we're going to put these cameras in and around town, are you guys able to use the footage from the camera to prosecute?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
Because I've we've heard other stories before, cars being stolen from driveways and someone having a doorbell ringer.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we can use that.
You can use
Yeah,
that.
any video footage, any footage that's provided to us, we can use.
Okay.
Yeah. All we need to do from a policing standpoint is source where the footage came from. So, we'd be able to say, okay, it came from the town of Prescott, or it came from, Josh Kingsley's Ring doorbell camera kind of thing. So as long as we can source where that came from. So it's a little trickier if someone just submits it as an anonymous, then that can assist us in starting an investigation. But unless we're able to source where it came from and how that data was captured to make sure it wasn't manipulated and those kinds of things. So as we can do that, that's not a problem. It's actually of significant value to us.
Okay, so would you recommend to this board to recommend to council to proceed with this?
Yes, I would.
What about the previous presentation we had?
On the ASE? Yes, I think there is value in automated speed enforcement. I know I've presented to other boards within Grenville County. The only drawback to ASE is it's got to be within a community safety zone.
Right.
So Prescott's fortunate where a lot of your community safety zones are your own streets, whereas the other municipalities I spoke to is a lot of the streets were managed by the county. So the community safety zones, although they traveled through their municipality, they were county roads. So then you had the partnership with the upper tier and all that, whereas I don't think you have the same issue in Prescott. The biggest thing is the volume. The cost will not be recovered by enforcement tickets because you just don't have the volume of road. Don't quote me on that. I don't know what your cost is, but I know that was one of the issues that we looked at. Is it can't be looked at as a self-funded revenue stream because it's not going to generate the amount of tickets to fund the cost. Maybe if you go through AMPS and process it locally, but when you went through the joint processing center in Toronto, that raises your cost because now you have to pay for each MTO check, each ticket that gets mailed out as a cost. So there's all those additional processing fees. Whereas if you're going to use the camera and manage that locally through bylaw or through your AMPS program, that could reduce your overall cost and make it more affordable, because it is like the primary goal is the public safety objective versus revenue generating. So if you look at it like that, you have to be able to say, what the cost supports the benefit, because the community safety zones are the higher risk locations. We do get complaints in some of the school zones. Like I know we were talking about, I think it was Port St. Mark's was the last one that we were looking at exploring if that was going to be considered to be a community safety zone. Because the fines are higher. So there is value to ASC. I could see from a cost point of view, maybe the trailer option being the most viable option, because then you're not investing in multiple cameras for all your locations. So you can maybe move that camera location, as the municipality sees fit. And that might also provide a option to partner with some of your neighboring municipalities in order to reduce your overall capital expenses on that. Because I didn't know the trailer was an option before. I had only seen the pole cams. So that was the only thing that we had explored in the past. So, having that be an option within Grenville County, if you were to explore that with your neighboring municipalities, could reduce your overall capital expenditure and your operating costs and bring value to it. Because if the members of the community don't know when it's going to be there, I mean, yes, we have to post 90 days, but if it can be anywhere at any time, that's not a bad thing.
A 90 days thing.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I could see is I understand where he was saying, but if you move it from one location to another and you take the 90-day warning sign down for a day and then you post it back up, to me, you've restarted your 90-day cycle, right? So you're going to keep that at another location for 90 days anyways, and then you'd have that ability to move it from community safety zone to community safety zone. The only risk with the trailer is the theft of batteries, right? We see that on the highway with the MTO signs. Well, it's not the only risk. It's not the only risk, but the MTO highway signs, the warning signs we did see last year and the year before, theft of batteries out of those. So with every opportunity comes a risk. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Through you, just this pharmacy robberies, do they come back to the same community? Or do they just keep moving down the 401? Like would they rob ours twice, for example?
Yeah, no, they come back to the same communities.
Okay.
Yeah, they come back to the same communities, and not a robbery, because a robbery is with violence. So it's just to kind of differentiate. I know that we use that term kind of loosely, but it is a theft. So yeah, like we do have incidences and we do capitalize on our partner agencies. So we do have a ROA, what's the term ROA? Regional operational analyst. Sorry. So what we do when we get these, because the pharmacies do have good footage inside, so we do capture that information, but what helps us further these investigations is vehicles and all that kind of stuff, and how people are traveling in and out of the locations, and if they're spotter vehicles and all that kind of stuff, because they do attend as a network generally. So just because two people go into the pharmacy to commit the theft doesn't mean there's not 6 people on standby to advise when the police are patrolling that area, right? So a lot of times these individuals do come back and they're very quick. Like when you see things like quick change thefts, shoplifting thefts, like these are professional thieves. They're not just a kid for the first time going and looking nervous and putting something in their pocket, right? And I say a kid loosely, it could be anybody, but no, these are professional thieves. Their job is to go out and steal high value, high end goods. They're equipped to defeat the store sensors. So they have, their bags are all lined and protected. These are professional thieves that are doing these crimes. So yeah, there's no fear. And unfortunately, our judicial system hasn't taken, what I call common thievery as serious as it should. So what we have been successful doing is the last group that we did arrest were not permanent residents to Canada. So we were able to partner up with Canada Border Services and have them deported as a result. So, we're getting some crime groups who are taking advantage of vulnerable people, people who, are coming to Canada to commit crimes. Not all, by all means, this is not to say that these are all operated by people, but I'm just referring to the last one that we solved. There are Canadian citizens as well as people from international groups that are targeting our areas. So hope that answers.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
No further discussion? Under item 9.1, bylaw update report, Merriman, Manager of Building and Bylaw, will provide the board with an update.
Thank you, Chair. Staff continues. So this is basically the first quarter of the year from January to the end of April. Staff continue to coordinate with the OPP and other community members This year, we did notice that homelessness continued year round. In the past, it's been more of a fair weather issue, but it did continue all winter this year. On a positive note, when I first started here, well over 200 tickets and tows used to happen during winter parking. This year there was 35, and we were out just as often and doing just as much, but I'd like to think that the coordination that we're doing with operations is a lot smoother now. And also we do a more of an education thing in the fall. So for 2 weeks, we go around placing pink warning things on the cars, reminding them that, hey, winter's coming. You're not supposed to be out here between 12 and 7. And so that's a good thing. Also to date, we have already issued 159 animal tags for the year. We've also sent out one letter reminding people that the importance of getting an animal tag so that we can get the animals back to them. And I hate to say it, we say it because it's much easier to do that than to involve the OPP later because there's a stray animal or a dog bite or anything else like that. So we will also continue during the month of May and the first couple of weeks of June, doing a more active role where we check people that are out walking, make sure that they have their dog tags and stuff like that. And of course, property standards starts back up again come spring. In the winter, the snow can hide an awful lot, but we do have at least 4 properties that were issued orders, and there's been numerous directions for cleanup in relation to weeds and everything else. And again, they can't say enough about the OPP working with us. They just do a great job. They helped us this past weekend in a situation that was interesting to say the least. So. And that's the extent of my report.
Thank you. There are no items under old business, and there are no questions from the media. And I guess we'll move to any suggestions for this month's public service announcement.
We'll probably focus on the crosswalk, if that's good. And also what we'll do is we'll send out a little bit of an electronic package to the schools to see if they can share that with their students and with parents in terms of exactly how to use those crosswalks as a bit of a learning tool. So
We can get, we'll tie in either Annie or Dave, whoever CSO, to give you the more of the legal definition in terms of signage and that kind of thing.
awesome. I appreciate it.
Do we want to suggest the chair goes to the schools?
No.
He could star in the video of using the crosswalk.
Get it on camera because if I get hit.
One where you get hit and one where you don't. So we'll probably do the not hit first and
There are no items under closed session. And there's nothing to report under item 15. Item 16 is adjournment. Recommendation reads, does this meeting be adjourned? The time is 10:17. Do I have a mover? Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Sorry, Rob. All in favor? Thank you.